Hi, I'm Nyla.
Hi, I'm Jonathan.
And thank you for watching this, our third video on energy management. Now, we both hope that you've enjoyed the previous two videos as much as we've enjoyed making them.
And we really have enjoyed making them.
We have indeed. And also that you're benefiting from the free techniques that we've shared with you previously. In this video, we're going to take the learning from video 1 and 2 that step further.
In this video, we'll be exploring how external energies can sometimes affect us and our personal spaces. We'll be looking at two types of external energy. Now, the first you'll have heard of. You'll most certainly know what it is. It's ghosts, or more commonly known as earthbound spirits. And the second type of external energy that can affect us, we briefly touched upon in video 2, and that's thought forms. It's important to know, though, that if you feel that your energy or the energy of your personal space is being adversely affected by external energies, there are many people who are trained in the UK to deal with these sort of energies and, if you'd like, to help them on their way.
So we've learned in our work as psychics, mediums and healers that it's really important that we actually practice the energy management techniques that we've learned over the years. So, for example, if we're at a mind-body-spirit event where we might be doing 12, 15 readings one after another, it's important that we keep our energy clear throughout the day so that when it comes to the end of the day, we're not totally drained.
Absolutely. And in particular, in our line of work, if we're doing things like spirit release, or we're helping people with psychic attack, or we're clearing spirit attachments, in that case, we really do need to walk our walk. It's kind of like we get up in the morning, we have a shower, we brush our teeth, and then we do our energy management stuff. It's that ingrained into our daily lives, and it has to be. One of the red flags, if you like, to remind us that we've not done our energy management practice effectively is when we feel suddenly drained, or when our thoughts and feelings aren't our own. Now, often it's important to remember that practice really does make perfect, doing it again and again and again. And then if we pick something up or we tune in and pick up an emotion, then to recognise that, acknowledge that, and to keep practicing.
Absolutely.
Part of it, I think, is about knowing yourself. And this is a really good maxim to remember in this line of work. Know thyself. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that as we begin to connect more and more with the inner part of ourselves, that part that is full of love and joy and peace and calm, we're more able to discern if we've picked up any other energy because they kind of stand out more. So knowing ourselves and beginning to learn more about our true self over time really helps us understand whether we've picked something up.
So what exactly is a ghost or an earthbound spirit? Now, the first thing to note is that it's nowhere near as sensational as, say, Hollywood would have us believe. So communicating and helping ghosts or earthbound spirits to move on is nothing like what the movies depict. In fact, if you've got ideas such as maybe Ghostbusters in your head, or the even more sensational ones, you know what I mean? The little girl spinning head, that one.
What have you been watching?
Never mind. Please put those thoughts completely out of your mind because it's nothing like that.
So no ectoplasm?
No ectoplasm, no.
And I wholly agree with Nyla. It is absolutely nothing like that. When you do this sort of work, it is literally humbling and heart-lifting and extraordinary. Often as you see two loved ones who haven't seen each other for such a while, reuniting. Yeah. It really is heart-lifting and humbling. So, what are ghosts? Well, there are two types of energetic activity that we would classify as ghosts. The first is what we might call, it's like a video that keeps on playing. So sometimes we can see it or feel it. It's almost like some traumatic incident keeps on repeating itself over time. Now, it might be triggered by, let's say, an anniversary of the incident itself, or it might repeat itself and happen in a particular place at a particular time, depending on the nature of the original experience or trauma that created this. So that's one type of ghost, if you like. The second type is much more commonly known, and that's really someone who's died and hasn't quite made it to the other side. Now, we want to reassure you immediately and say that in the modern age, the vast majority of people, something like 99.9999% of people, have a very quick and easy transition. In fact, quicker than blinking an eye, they move from here, the physical, into the non-physical. They just take on a new body, and it feels totally natural. So actually, often what we find in this type of work, that the only problem is that the individual doesn't quite know that they're dead yet, which makes it quite straightforward to explain to them and enable them to move on. So that's ghosts. The other type of energy we talked about is thought forms. Now, thought forms are actually the second type of energy we find most often in the sort of house clearing or space clearing that we do, or even attached to people. And let's give an example. If in a house, let's say there's been a traumatic experience, for example, there's been a breakup of a relationship, or someone's been chronically ill for a long time, or someone's died. Any type of really traumatic experience will leave its imprint in the form of the thought form in the location, and generally it dampens down the energy and the energy feels a bit heavier. Thought forms, however, are far more widely prevalent. So, for example, if we go into a shop and buy something, or perhaps if a friend gives us an item, then that may also have a thought form attached.
Crystals, for example.
Yeah.
And now they can absorb thought forms very, very easily. So let's take a worst case scenario, for example. If the miner who extracts the crystal from the ground, or the lapidist who cuts the crystal into the shape that you receive it in, has poor working practices around them.
Yeah.
And that causes them to bring up emotions and thoughts which are not particularly pleasant. Well, those thought forms can be held within that crystal. And that's why we ensure that every crystal that we use for Crystals of Hope jewellery are cleansed. And they are cleansed from the moment they walk through the door. So before we've even unpackaged them, we make sure we've got the cleansing process going right from the get-go. Now, we might share with you a couple of examples of where maybe ghosts, earthbound spirits or thought forms have kind of made themselves known to us. My example is where Jonathan and I went for lunch many years ago at what used to be a 17th century inn, but was now serving as a pub and a restaurant.
It was very quaint.
It was lovely. We parked the car, walked over to the door, and before I actually reached the door and went over to turn the door handle, the door actually opened of its own accord, which was really strange.
Yeah, it didn't have one of those Hitchcock like, it just opened.
Yeah.
And Nyla turned to me and said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yes." Looking for a logical explanation. Was there a guy hovering behind the door like the restaurant manager or a waiter? No, there was no one to be seen, literally.
Well, we went inside and sat down and ordered our food. But it became very clear that we weren't the only two sitting at our table. Now that day I was wearing a top which was a lovely colour, but it was slightly lower than what I'm used to. And when I tuned in to find out what was going on, there was a young gentleman there who had been a farrier looking after horses. And this was his favourite watering hole. He also had a bit of an eye for the ladies.
I think more than one eye, you know.
And so he often used to hover by the front door, welcoming ladies that kind of he'd taken a liking to.
And if he really liked you, he'd open the door for you.
Absolutely. So as we were talking, we asked him whether he wanted to move on. Now, he was quite happy being at the door and checking out the ladies and being in his favourite place. So we left him where he was.
No, he was extremely happy.
He was indeed. But you, Jonathan, have got an example which was much closer to home.
Yes, that's very true. Yes. So very shortly after Nyla and I met, which was a long time ago now, we were thinking about selling up our properties and sort of putting the money in and moving outside the City of London. And we were talking this through when Nyla confessed something to me.
Yeah. Jonathan lived in a flat, a beautiful flat, overlooking the River Thames. And it was really, really peaceful.
It was.
Except for one room. I really didn't like it, to the point where I used to drop my coat off and rush out as soon as I could. And it was something that I hadn't really mentioned to Jonathan until we started talking about selling.
No, why didn't you?
Well, it wasn't the kind of relationship building conversation, was it? You know, I like you but hate your room.
Oh, it's good you like me then. I hate the room. Yeah, no, I can see what you're saying. It might have put a little bit of a short-term damper on things, but okay, right.
So then Jonathan asked, well, what do you mean you don't like the energy? What's wrong with it? So I walked Jonathan into the room and said, look, this is what I'm picking up in this room. And in that room, I felt despairing, depressed, sad, alone, really lonely, and just very, very unwell. And it felt as though my left arm would hurt so much, and yet there was no reason for me to feel that way because it was just Jonathan's study. Yet my left arm always used to hurt when I was in that room.
So you went through all this pain without fessing up to me?
Well, that's why I rushed out the room, then the pain was gone.
Oh, yeah, okay. So then it was my time to confess. Before I met Nyla, I'd received a transplant, a kidney transplant. And before that, for 12 years, that had been my dialysis room.
Yeah.
So there was a kidney machine in there. Now, a kidney machine is simply a machine that clears your blood. And so every other night, for 6 or 7 or 8 hours, I'd connect myself up to the kidney machine and dialyse myself. And this was whilst I was holding down a 12-hour job in the City of London. So absolutely. Was I tired? Yes, you bet. Was I exhausted? Oh, you bet. Was I depressed? Well, I was. I felt like I was a prisoner, really, in my own home. So actually, remarkably, every thought that Nyla was able kind of like to pick out of the air or thought form was spot on. In terms of the pain in my left arm, that was a good one, because to connect yourself with the machine, which is really just clearing your blood, all you do is put a couple of needles into your arm. So that's the pain and discomfort you were connecting to. So you got it right. So, of course, naturally I said, what do we do about this?
Well, my first thought was salt would be a great start. And as luck would have it...
Yes, as luck would have it, there was a 100-kilogram bin of salt, which was the only remaining part of the kidney machine that they'd left behind, and I hadn't worked out what to do with it. It was so much salt. So I spread it on the floor, 3 or 4 inches thick, all the way around. It wasn't a very big room, but especially in the corners and the sides of the room, and we left it there for a couple of weeks, didn't we?
Mm. When we went back to check on it, the salt that had formerly been white had turned a very grey, murky colour, and in some places, black. It had absorbed all those energies and thought forms that I had experienced earlier on.
Quite literally the colour of my thoughts.
Absolutely.
Makes you think, eh? What hospitals are like. Anyway, so we came back and we cleared all the salt, and then even I noticed the difference. It felt lighter, it felt not as heavy.
It was really lovely in that it felt like someone had opened a window and a fresh breeze was making its way through the room, and it was so much more pleasant. So I never felt like I needed to rush out of there anymore. I could spend long periods of time quite happily in that room.
It was a bit of a wake-up call. We wanted also to share with you a little bit about our background of how we got into this type of work. Now, as we've told you before, we've worked with many people over a number of years. We've used an aura cam to see their energy. And of course, sometimes we notice energetic attachments, etc. in the aura can. But also we've worked as mediums and healers. The technical description, I think, of our job is a spirit release practitioner. And what that is it's someone who literally is able to firstly communicate with people who've died and then help them understand what the next steps for them might be. You're working with spiritual helpers, and really it's all about reassuring that individual, helping them connect with perhaps the reasons of why they might have died. And then it's fairly straightforward to help them understand that actually, rather than hanging around Earth, which they don't have a lot of fun and can't interact a lot with, there's another place which is much more fun, where they have a wonderful reunion with all their friends and family, and they have a chance to really enjoy themselves and carry on living, in effect. So it's something that we really need to train to be, if you like, centred in your heart. Because often some of the reasons why people don't want to move on is because they fear there's going to be some form of judgment. Now, all the work that Nyla and I have done over many years with many people who've died, judgment never happens. It's never part of the equation. What usually greets them is love, healing, help, many other types of support. So it's important that we're able to compassionately connect with them and their circumstances and not judge them in any way. So that's our background, and we wanted to share just a brief example of how that can pan out in terms of the effect that clearing a space, for example, can have on the people in the space and occasionally the animals in the space.
Yes, indeed.
So a number of years back we had a lady get in touch and say that she felt that her house wasn't clear. She wasn't sure why, or she wasn't sure, I think, even what that meant. So we asked her, okay, well, why did she get a sense that it may not be clear? She said, because the dog's behaving very strangely. Now, I've been brought up with dogs, so generally I know if they're acting strange, and this dog really was acting strange. It was gazing literally into the top of the back of a wall in their drawing room whilst they were watching TV, and its eyes were fixated on a point. It was almost mesmerised. It wouldn't move. And this sort of carried on for a few days, then a few weeks, and they began to get somewhat disconcerted about this. So we went down there. And within 4 or 5 minutes, it was very clear that there was an uninvited guest there. We had a chat with him, and he told us a story, which was that he felt it was his right to be there because he'd sold the property on which this building was built, and also another building next door was built. He'd given that, to his 2 sons, on the condition that they carried the family business on. The family business was scrapyard, being scrapyard merchants, if you like, because that's what he'd done and that's what the property had been used for. Sadly, when he died, the first thing they did was they sold it off to a developer. And
scrapped that idea, literally.
Absolutely, they scrapped that idea, probably, yes. It was very sad, and it was very clear that he had very good reasons for being so upset. So we explained the process of death and how he might move on to another place where he'd have a lot more fun than just hanging around his old property, his old haunt, so to speak. And then his wife came through, and that was fabulous to watch the reunion there. And then we also explained, from the heart, that actually this really wasn't his property anymore, that there'd been a legal exchange of contract, that these people had bought it in good faith, and they hadn't really counted on the fact that he'd be hanging around. Well, suffice it to say that he got the message, and he voluntarily decided he'd much rather hang around up there, where there was a bit of a wild party waiting for him arriving up there, than down here. Interestingly, almost immediately, the dog's behaviour began to return to normal, no more gazing fixedly at the ceiling as they watched their TV evening, and everything seemed to return to normal and everyone felt more comfortable and happy. Often there is what we describe as a happy ending with this type of clearing work.
Well, thank you for watching this video on exploring and understanding external energies and also thought forms. Now, if you'd like to receive a free technique whereby you can scan your energy to see if there are any external influences, then please do sign up below. We'd be delighted to send you an exercise in written form, but also in an audio form so that you can actually follow the instructions when you're on your own. Now, if you'd like to expand your knowledge on this subject even further, we will also send you details of an upcoming workshop in London on this very subject of managing external energies and unclear personal spaces.
So if you feel in any way that either your energy or the energy of your personal space is unclear, or if you feel you're being affected by energy external to you, then this really is the workshop for you. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes to watch the video. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've learnt a little and had a bit of fun listening to it. We'd love to see you soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.